Hi everyone, this is Rayon Paper. Welcome to another video. So a while ago, my ink switching journal had a baby. And I'm just kidding, but I figured it would be fun to change up the way that I do my currently inked. I was doing it in a very narrow Hobonichi Weeks supplement, and I don't know, I didn't really like how that looked. The spacing on the page was very awkward for what I wanted to do with it. So I still had this notebook lying around. So I decorated it more or less in the same way as my ink swatch journal. The end result, I think, is very satisfying. So we're going to put this big one to the side. And then we have this one, in which I'm going to be doing the currently inked for the month of May. I did a little test run with April's currently inked, and I just really like how this looks. So that's what we're going to do for May as well. I've gone ahead and drawn in a few lines with pencil. I'll erase these afterwards after the ink is dried, but that'll just help with the spacing and making sure I can fit everything onto one page. I have 6 pens inked up, varying a lot in terms of brands. I think, let's see, yeah, all 6 of them are different brands. I have 3 diamine inks and 3 other inks from other brands. So there's a lot to talk about. My inspiration for this month in terms of ink colors was I wanted something muted that still made me think of spring, but more like a foggy spring morning. So maybe the sun isn't shining yet. It's still very early. That was the inspiration, and I've ended up with 6 pens and inks that don't necessarily embody that anymore. But you know, you have to start somewhere. The first pen is this one. This is my Leonardo Furore in white salt with an extra fine nib. And I've inked this up with the Sailor Kingdom Note collaboration called Higurashi. This ink is a lovely olive green. It's a little bit more on the muted side, not too vibrant. It's a lovely earthy color. It has wonderful shading, and you can even see that a little bit with the extra fine nib. The nib writes very smooth on this pen, and I'm really liking this combination. I had this inked up last month with Dominant Industry Lake, which is a teal blue turquoisey color. And I like how, in my eyes, the white pen can be combined with many different colors inks. Then the second pen is quite a new addition, and that is my Tibaldi Bononia in Martini olive. It also has an extra fine nib, as do, yeah, literally all of the pens on this lineup. And I've inked this one up with Diamine Salamander, which I think is the perfect combination for this pen. Not just in terms of how well it behaves, but also in terms of color, because this pen, depending on the light, you'd say it's either brown or green, and Diamine Salamander has the exact same properties. It's somewhere in between a brown and a green. Then the third pen is my Delta Spaccanapoli in Palazzo Serra Cassano. And this month I've inked this one up with Diamine 3 Kings, which is an Inkfant calendar from a couple of years back. It's a lovely warm brownish yellow, and I really like that about this pen because it has both sort of that brownish orangey yellow color in the resin as well as the brown. You can really use that entire spectrum of colors and it will always look really good. And as you maybe saw, I used a sample of this ink to swatch it and also to ink up the pen. But I love this ink so much that I already have a bottle of it waiting for when the sample is completely used up. It is such a gorgeous, gorgeous, warm, lovely color. I think it would also be a great ink choice for an autumn ink palette. And now after 3 Italian pans, it is time for a German one, and that is my trusty LAMY Safari in the Terra color. And I've inked this one up with Diamine Terracotta. And while I very much like the color and it flows really well out of the extra fine LAMY nib, I had expected it to be a little bit more of a muted orange red. It's actually a little brighter than I expected when I first inked it up. And then we have a pen that I'm not that sure I actually really like in terms of how it looks. I have frankenpenned 2 Jinhao 82s together to create this combination. It's this sort of tan sand color and this sort of old rosy color with a gold trim. And on the one hand, I think it looks very classic and it looks pretty, and but on the other hand, I don't know about you, but I think this is giving grandma vibes, and I don't know, there's nothing wrong with grandma vibes, and it fits I think it was my March theme in my common planner really well, because I also used sort of vintagey, old-timey, rose-colored stickers for that. But I'm not really sure if I like it on this pen. Fortunately, it wasn't really an expensive pen. So yeah, and I do kind of like the colors separately. I just think the combination, I'm not sure if it works. And the ink I've paired this one with is a shimmer ink, and it's a collaboration between Dominant Industry and Scrittura Elegante, and it's called Dutch Moorlands. It's a very interesting ink. It's grayish, brownish, sand colored with a bit of sort of purple pink leaning shading and a purple pinkish shimmer. It's really hard to describe, I think, but it's a very interesting ink. can't see the shimmer all too well yet. So I'm gonna let this dry for a bit and I'll show you again then. But in the meantime, we'll go to the last pen, and that is my Kaigelu 316, I want to say. I'm suddenly not that sure anymore, but we're just going to go with 316 for now. And I'm not sure about the color either. Wow. Good. Well prepared, Rue. Well prepared. But yeah, this is my first and only Kaigelu pen. And it is actually the first, I've had it for a while, but it's the first time I've inked it up. And I've inked it up with Robert Oster Chicago, but I'm having a bit of trouble with the pen, and I'm not sure if I fixed it this morning or if the problem will still persist. But this one has been writing so wet that at times it just will drop an entire drop of ink on the page, which is very unusual. Then it's like you can't even really write with it at that point. But I've sort of tried and pushed the nib to the feed a bit more, and I've also tried to get rid of all the excess ink in the feed. Got a little bit of air up in the, what's it called, the converter. Made sure the converter is really well fitted into the grip section, and I'm hoping that it'll be okay now, but I guess we'll find out. I love the color of this ink so much. It's a beautiful grayish, unsaturated blue, sort of a steel blue color. Very, very pretty. The pen still writes super, super wet, but it is more consistent now than it was before this morning. So I think at least it helped a bit. But I might have to try this with a drier ink. I found this ink to be quite average, not especially wet. So I don't think the ink is the problem per se. But I'm gonna have to try this with a really dry ink at some point. But for now, I'll just experiment with it this month and see how it goes. I think the color palette is not necessarily a misty, foggy spring morning after all, but I do really like these colors together. I love these warm, earthy colors. I love a grayish blue as well. It pairs so well with the other colors. I think the Dutch Moorlands stands out the most. But yeah, I like this color palette, and I like the lineup, and I hope you can see it already in the swatches, but you can see the shimmer quite well. It's not as shimmery as some other inks, but that is just the ink. And I like that actually. I like that it's more of a subtle shimmer. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this currently inked video, and I will see you next month with next month's color palette. See you. Take care. Bye.